Morning all. This lesson, fairly short, I think, will be about taking off. I want to go through some of the things that are a bit tricky about them sometimes. Probably most of these are surrounding the tail dragger aeroplanes. Planes are just two front wheels, tail on the ground. And the problem is what's called a ground loop. Now, unfortunately, this sim doesn't really ground loop planes very well, but what happens is you're taxiing along and suddenly the plane does this, and you're like, what happened there? What that's caused by is, if you think about the centre of gravity of the plane, let's have a look at it. The centre of gravity of the plane is about a third of the way down the wings, and that happens to be behind the front wheels. Okay, so when you have the front wheels, which the plane is steering around, if they're ahead of the centre of gravity, that's what tends to make them want to make the centre of gravity spin around and overtake the front wheels. With a tricycle undercarriage, you won't get that effect because the centre of gravity will be forward of the main wheels, whereas with the tail dragger you will get that problem. And ground loops are just something that, on some planes, depends on the plane, some are really bad, will happen when you try and take off. The best way to avoid that is to not do this, which is apply full power. Okay, the best way to avoid it is to So you ready for your takeoff? Ready for your takeoff, gradually apply power, so you're increasing power slowly and getting to a speed about here where you're watching carefully for a ground loop. Okay, if it does start to wander off, hopefully you can catch it, and then eventually you get a little bit more speed up on the plane and the tail will start to lift. Once that happens, you no longer should be having the possibility of a ground loop happening, and you should be safe from those. So as soon as the tail lifts off the ground, you can then steer the plane with the rudder, and it should all work from that point onwards. So the idea is that you're reasonably slow, trying to get past the point where ground loops can happen, and if they do, it doesn't happen at high speed with a lot of power being applied. Okay, does that make sense? So I'll go through that again. We're trying to avoid this sort of thing happening, which I have to make happen in the simulator. That's a ground loop there. We're applying power, and suddenly it just goes like that and loses steering. Okay, that's what we're trying to avoid in the real models. And the best way I've found to do that is to steadily and gradually apply power. And you are looking for ground loops to happen in the region before the tail lifts off the ground. Once the tail lifts off the ground, you should no longer get a ground loop, and you should be able to steer then with the rudder. Okay, so we'll do a takeoff again. Beyond that, there's not a huge amount to takeoffs. They're reasonably straightforward. They're certainly much easier than landings. We're looking to build up speed gradually, keeping the planes tracking correctly with the rudder, and then at a point where we want to take off, we can either let the plane take off by itself, which most planes will do, or you can apply this tiny bit of up elevator to get the plane off the ground. I think it looks nicer if you have the plane just gently ease off the ground. Okay, so we're here, ready for takeoff. Apply slightly increased power to get the plane accelerating, controlling and looking for a ground loop, ready to respond to it. When the tail lifts off, like that, then we should be right from that point onwards. Keep increasing the accelerator, pull back on the elevator slightly, and the plane will just climb away. Hope that all makes sense. That's one way to do takeoffs. I'm not the expert here, but it's just a way that I've found has worked for me. Come back and land. Alright, that's the way that I've found is the best way to do takeoffs. Cheers.